The New York Giants have a new name they're looking at as a potential bridge quarterback. We'll tell you who and why we think it makes sense. That's coming your way next here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Trainer, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you find all of our written work. And as always, welcome on into our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. All right, folks, on today's show, there's a new name that the Giants are taking a look at as far as veteran quarterback goes. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and why I really like this candidate for a veteran quarterback. I've got some stats. I did a little research. I'm going to make a case for this particular quarterback to be signed. You know who I'm talking about, Jameis Winston, who we'll talk about in the first segment. And then in segment two, I was looking at the Giants wide receiver group and, I'm not really sure what they're doing there, and I'll explain more about it. But in particular, I'm trying to figure out if there's a role for Jalin Hyatt on this team, and if there is no role for him, what might his future be? So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll wrap things up with some final thoughts, and one of which is how Aaron Rodgers could potentially help the Giants, even if he doesn't sign with them. So we'll talk about that. And that's our agenda for today's show. So again, welcome on in. So let's get into it, shall we? Jameis Winston, the latest veteran quarterback to be linked to the New York Giants. Winston, of course, looking to be on a roster someplace. I don't think it's going to be with the Cleveland Browns. But Winston is coming in to visit with the Giants on Tuesday. So actually he's coming in Monday night, and his visit's going to extend into Tuesday. So, Winston's a guy, first overall pick in the draft with the Bucks, and then he kind of, descended a little bit into a backup role. He was with the Saints, and then last year, of course, with the Browns. And he's the type of guy who's kind of frustrating in that for every deep ball he tries to throw, he has interceptions and turnovers and stuff. But in looking at the big picture with Jameis Winston, here's why I think he could potentially make sense for the Giants, even, with the production being what it is. And I get it. The schedule is tough. And, will the Giants win many games if he's the quarterback and all that stuff? But here's a case I can make for Jameis Winston. So with this scouting report, he's got a strong arm. He's mobile. Okay, so he can run some of those RPO and zone read plays and design quarterback runs. He's not going to cost as much as an Aaron Rodgers. That much I could probably guarantee you. And he seems willing to mentor a young quarterback. And that could be very important, obviously, because that's what the Giants want from their veteran bridge quarterback. They want somebody to come in here, if they draft the quarterback, and mentor that young man. Now here's sticking with the mentoring part for a minute. As I mentioned, Winston was at one time the first overall pick in the draft. And he has since, rather than build up a career as the guy, if you will, he's become a backup. So if you're looking for a really good mentor, Winston could be that guy because, he can maybe sit with a young quarterback who might be the first round pick, might be the first overall pick, depending if the Giants trade up. And he can sit with that kid and say, look, this is what kind of happened in my career, why I'm not sitting at the top of the heap of some NFL team. These are the mistakes that I made, or that, the pitfalls that I fell into. This is what you need to avoid. So, the thought of Winston as a mentor for a young quarterback kind of appeals to me, I think, in that regard. But let's talk about, performances. All right. So I took a look at what the Browns receivers, excuse me, did last year. And two in particular, Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman, both had the best years receiving yard wise of their careers. So Jeudy finished with 1,229 yards and a Pro Bowl, his first Pro Bowl berth, which was the yardage a career high. Cedric Tillman, 339 yards, also a career high. And I get it, Winston didn't play a full season, but he was in there for more than half of the season last year. So he kind of brought out the best in some of those receivers that the Browns had. Now, there were the turnovers. I get it. But, if you're going to be a gunslinger, if you're going to take chances down the field, unfortunately, that comes with the territory, So I don't know if that's enough to necessarily disqualify Winston for consideration. But that being said, let's take a look at some more stats. So Winston has a 46.9% career success rate. This per Pro Football Reference. The success rate measures whether the player picks up at least 40% of the required yardage on first down, 60% on second down, and 100% on third and fourth down. Then I did a comparison with Aaron Rodgers, Joe Flacco, and Russell Wilson. So Winston has a 61.2% regular season career completion rate. That's not that far off from Rodgers, who is at 65.1. It's not that far off from Flacco, 61.7. And it's not too far off either from Wilson, 64.7. All right. So that's not, you're not talking a huge gap in terms of completion percentage. The other thing that I found interesting with between Winston and Flacco is that Winston has a better touchdown percentage, 4.8 versus what Flacco had. So, statistically, can you say there's a huge difference? I guess it's all relative. You look at Aaron Rodgers, he's played probably twice as long as Winston. Same with Flacco, so the numbers are going to be skewed a little bit. I get that. But, it could be a lot worse. I mean, I think the Giants could do a whole lot worse. And, here's the other thing with the veteran bridge quarterback. If the Giants get a rookie in here, ideally they want to start that kid after, sitting him for a year. Let him acclimate. Don't rush him in or anything like that. So I think if they end up signing like a Wilson or a Rodgers, they might not be able to do that. And the reason why I say that is because you might have to give those guys 2-year contracts in order to kind of lessen the hit on the cap. So now you're in a position to where maybe you have an expensive backup in 2026, which shouldn't stop you from starting your rookie if you get a rookie. But, that's money that could better be spent elsewhere. So I just can't help but wonder, would Winston maybe be more agreeable to a 1-year deal? Now, according to Spot Track, Winston has a market value of roughly $6 million. I don't think if he ends up being the starting quarterback, it's going to be $6 million. But, if they could get him up to about, under between 20 or 25 for 1 year, I mean, that might be a big chunk of change. But, the bottom line is I think it would cost them less to sign Winston than it would to maybe sign Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers. So, is that the direction the Giants are going to go in, or are they just bringing in Winston and these other guys to put the squeeze on, whether it be Wilson or whether it be Rodgers? Who knows what they're doing exactly. But just in my opinion, I don't think I would absolutely hate it if it was Winston. Now, I realize, again, it would probably mean some struggles. I know I've said before that I'm getting tired of the losing, as I'm sure all of you are. But sometimes, this is what the situation is with this team. And if it means down the line that they're going to have a rookie develop into a solid starter for them for years to come, might be worth it to grin and bear it for one more year. I don't know. That's just my take. All right, coming up next, what's going on with Jalin Hyatt's future? We'll talk about that based on a visit that was reported the Giants had right after this. Hey, Giant fans, March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's going to be the one cutting down the nets. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoop action all tournament long. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and we are 5 days a week still here on the Locked On Giants podcast. We've got some great things coming up. I'm going to do a mock draft at some point. Probably, I don't know if it's going to be this week or next week, but I will do a full 7-round mock draft. I know that's always a popular feature and a fun feature to do. And we have, I'm going to see if I can get a guest on before, in the next couple of weeks or so to talk more about the draft as we shift back to draft coverage and attention. So lots of stuff still to come. And of course, once the Giants do sign a veteran quarterback, whoever that might be, we'll have a reaction show on that. So I hope you will stay with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. All right, let's talk now about Jalin Hyatt. Now, here's something interesting. It was reported on Monday morning that the Giants were hosting receiver Zach Pascal for a visit. And I went back and I looked at the Giants receiver depth chart, and the first 3 guys are pretty much set. All right. So you got Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton, who's returning, Wan'Dale Robinson. Pascal, if he comes in, he can play special teams as well as contribute in the offense, but I think he's more of a special teamer. But, looking at the rest of the offense, particularly the receivers, you have Amir Smith-Marset, who's special teams. You have Bryce Ford-Wheaton, who's special teams. And you have Jalin Hyatt, who doesn't play special teams, but who plays offense. So I can't help but wonder, where does he fit in? You look back at the stats, and last year, Jalin Hyatt saw his numbers drastically fall off a cliff, right? So you just wonder, he didn't beat out Slayton for that wide receiver 2 job. Slayton's back. Where does Jalin Hyatt fit into this offense, if at all? So I had this crazy idea. And I think some of you might, who saw it on Twitter, you might have misunderstood what I was saying. I'm not saying, actually the idea was to package up Jalin Hyatt with maybe a draft pick or 2 to move up to see if you can entice the Titans to give you the number 1 pick overall. Now, some of you took that to mean that, just straight up trade Jalin Hyatt for the Titans' number 1 overall pick in the draft. No, that won't get it done. I'm not that silly. But the Titans do need receivers. Jalin Hyatt, for whatever the reason, just isn't working out here. He's regressed. Maybe he benefits from a fresh start. Could trading him and maybe one of the Giants' 3rd-round picks that they have, the higher of the 2, could that maybe get it done? I don't know that it could. You might have to throw something else in there, maybe a conditional pick in 2026. But it sure would beat having to entice the Titans with the 3rd overall pick and the 1st-round pick next year. Now, for the record, I don't think the Titans really want to move out of the 1st-round pick. My gut feeling is that based on what they have done in free agency with beefing up their offensive line, they're probably getting ready to draft a quarterback. And that quarterback most likely is going to be Cam Ward, who I believe the Giants would like to get their hands on if they can. I think Cam Ward is the top quarterback on the Giants board. But if the Giants really find themselves, desperate, and let's face it, again, jobs are on the line this year. They're going to have to win. And unless, Joe Shane, Brian Dable can convince John Mara that, hey, look, we tried to get a veteran quarterback in here. We couldn't get Stafford. Rodgers is playing around with us, trying to use us to drive up the price elsewhere. We have to, maybe take a step back and just be patient with the coming season with the quarterback situation. That could be the scenario there. But, to my point though about Jalin Hyatt, we just don't know where he fits in. I had hoped that he would start to emerge to where maybe now the Giants, had an option to where they could have said, okay, we'd like to have Darius Slayton back, but we don't need him because Jalen's ready to step in. But given that they brought Darius Slayton back, a move which, by the way, I don't hate, given that they brought him back and that the money they're paying him, it's pretty clear, again, that the first 3 receiver slots are set. There's only so many passes to go around. And then, you throw in Theo Johnson as a potential receiver. You throw in Tyrone Tracy as a receiver out of the backfield. What role exactly is Jalin Hyatt going to have on this team moving forward? I don't know. I don't know if they know. So that's why I propose that maybe Jalin Hyatt be packaged somewhere in a trade, whether it be part of a package to move up to number 1, or who knows, it might even be part of a package to move up elsewhere in the draft. Although, maybe the Giants decide that, okay, if Cam Ward's off the board and, they're not crazy about Shedeur Sanders, or if Shedeur Sanders is off the board, maybe the Giants decide if Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders are off the board, if they go 1 and 2, maybe the Giants, say, okay, we're going to go best available at 3. And then maybe they look to package up an offer to get back into the bottom of the first round if Jackson Dart is still on the board, if Jalen Milroe is still on the board, because you want to get that quarterback, if you can, in the first round so that you have available to you the 5th-year option. So this way, if the kid has to sit for, this year, you still have an extra year to evaluate him as opposed to just having 3 years left. So that could be another possibility for Jalin Hyatt. But I don't know. Overall, I really hope he had worked out. I still hope he would work out if he's still on the team, but I just don't see where he fits in. So something to keep an eye on come the draft weekend. If maybe the Giants look to make a move, or maybe they keep him, let him compete. I don't know, but suffice it to say, just a very, very weird and curious situation that just hasn't panned out. So, all right, coming up next, I have a few miscellaneous thoughts, including how Aaron Rodgers can help the Giants, even if he doesn't sign with them. That's right. Tell you about it right after this.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And keep in mind, if the Giants do resolve their quarterback situation, I'll have a quick video for you. And then, of course, we'll have a reaction show. So that's coming up at some point. I don't know when. We got to keep it flexible. We got to keep things open. And, it's kind of interesting. I forgot to timestamp this for you, but I'm actually taping the show a little earlier. I started at 4:30 p.m. on Monday taping this show. So just to give you that timestamp, because as you know, news changes quickly this time of year. So I like to give you a time reference so that you know, and you don't say, hey, you said this, and this guy signed here, and your information's outdated. So anyway, let's talk about how Aaron Rodgers can help the Giants if he doesn't sign with them. Now, some of you are saying, well, if he doesn't sign with them, great. The Giants won't have to put up with his mercurial temperament, with his, doing things on his terms and wanting to do this and being a distraction and this, that, and the other thing. Yeah, that's That's an argument. Yeah, let's not, kid ourselves. That's definitely an argument. But here's another thing that could help the Giants out. If Aaron Rodgers picks the Steelers, that will help the Giants with Russell Wilson. How so, you ask? Well, Russell Wilson, as y'all know, Cleveland had a meeting with him. But Cleveland doesn't have, as of right now, the cap space to sign Russell Wilson. So according to Over the Cap, Cleveland has $12.216 million in cap space. That's probably not going to be enough to sign Russell Wilson. The Browns would have to restructure, and quite honestly, after, some of the moves that they made, I don't know that they would do that. I mean, if they're going to restructure for a quarterback, they might be better off seeing if Kirk Cousins might be available for trade. So that being said, if Aaron Rodgers says, okay, you know what, I'm going to the Steelers, that closes the door on Russell Wilson potentially returning to the Steelers. And if the money is not, if the two sides, Russell Wilson and the Giants, are apart on money, which could be the case, I don't know, maybe that, takes away a potential landing spot for Russell Wilson. Because look, here's the bottom line. Russell Wilson would be the best option for the Giants. Rodgers isn't coming here. I'm convinced of that. And I know I just got through doing a segment saying how Jameis Winston would be a really good option. But if you're trying to pick between Winston and Russell Wilson, I think you go with Wilson. For the same reasons that I mentioned for Winston, except Wilson is a little less reckless with the ball, if you will. So, I don't know if the Giants are going to land Russell Wilson, but Aaron Rodgers, if he says, I'm going to the Steelers, I think that can help the Giants, because the Giants do have the cap space to sign Russell Wilson to potentially a 2-year deal, which I think would be a good length of a deal for him. Maybe even a 3-year deal with an out after 2, because you want to have a backup quarterback on the roster next year. Even if you draft the guy this year, you don't want to leave yourself with not having an experienced backup on the roster next year. So that's why I keep thinking that, the Giants, whoever they sign as their bridge quarterback, is going to get a contract in that 2 to 3 year range, with possibly the 3rd year being a voidable year. So anyway, speaking of additional miscellaneous thoughts, in looking over some of the contracts that the Giants have signed guys to, no voidable years in any of these deals, which is kind of interesting because, a lot of you always ask me, how did the Eagles do it? Always have money, and how are they always able to do this, that, and the other thing? And it's through voidable years, folks. So the voidable year helps you spread out or thin out, if you will, the signing bonus, the prorated signing bonus. And with the cap continuing to go up and up and up, what might seem like a huge cap hit, or a huge dead money hit, I should say, now, like let's say, the projection is, this player after 2 years, he's got a voidable year, and his dead money hit is going to be $15 million. Right now, that might seem like a lot, but given how the cap is going up, and next year it should be well over $300 million, that's not, that 15 million suddenly isn't a true 15 million. So I'm kind of surprised the Giants haven't used that, but I think I know why they haven't used voidable years. And that is if they have to restructure guys down the line, which again, if they were, they're not horrible with managing the cap. They've gotten better, but this can really, using voidable years, I'm just really surprised they haven't taken that page out of, the Eagles playbook. The Bills have done it. So many teams have done it, and it's just such an effective way if you consider that the cap is going up and up and up. And like I said, 15 million today won't seem like 15 million in dead money if you're talking about the grand scheme of things in terms of the percentage against your cap. So that was kind of curious to me with what the Giants are doing, or in this case, not doing. So, the other thing, talking about the quarterback situation, and what a good starting quarterback would be worth. One of the questions I think the Giants need to ask themselves is, does it make sense to really splurge on a guy? Bring a guy in here for $50 million a year, where if you're going to have a rookie come in addition, and you want that rookie to start as soon as 2026, does it pay to be paying a guy big money? So that was another reason why, just going back to the Jameis Winston argument, I don't think Jameis Winston's going to command $50 million a year like an Aaron Rodgers might, like, maybe Russell Wilson is looking for. I didn't think that's going to happen. But, it's just so many twists and turns. And all I know is it's getting late early for the New York Giants and the veteran backup quarterback situation. And hopefully we have an answer by the end of the week. Who knows? I hope there's an answer as soon as tomorrow, if not by tonight, which would mean I would have to retape this show. But if I do, no big deal. I'll do it. So we'll see how it plays out and just hope for the best. So anyway, that's going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. And before I say goodbye, I just want to thank you again for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first listen today. And also for your second listen, please consider checking out the Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, you can get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day, especially with pro days going on. Those two guys are on top of everything. So if the draft is your thing, you'll want to tune into them. You can find the Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, Giant fans, that'll do it for me. I will see you again tomorrow.